Alrighty, this is another one of our John and William Bartram sites. This is a site on Drayton Island, which at the time they called Bryan's Island, after the owner of the island. They visited the island on their return trip, or they had ventured up the St. Johns River as far as Brevard County, and then turned around and were headed back across Lake George, which is just to the south. And after coming out of Salt Springs, they crossed this west channel of the St. Johns River between the mainland on the west and Drayton Island. And they came ashore here on Drayton Island and made camp. They don't mention having explored the island very much. The only mention that they make is of a bluff about 4 feet above the water that was covered with shells and mussels. They made their camp on the night of the 26th, and then the following morning they returned to their bateau and then rode on up towards Mount Royal, which was their next stop as they proceeded back into Putnam County. There are, in some of the different writings that William published, he makes mention of stopping and camping again on Bryan's Island. And if you, depending on which reading you take as gospel, it's possible that he actually did come back and camp on Bryan's Island again. But one of the writings says that he came back and visited the island and then went back across the river to Rocky Point and ended up spending the night at Rocky Point after exploring around on the island a little bit. On another, it sounds like maybe he pitched camp on Drayton Island and actually stayed another night on Drayton Island. So we're not really certain, but we do know that that he did visit this site with his father John on their return down the St. Johns River in 1766. Drayton Island is a privately owned island, and so there is not there's no good access point on the island at the actual sites where the Bartrams camped. You can approach the sites by water like we are now, although we don't really know for certain where along this shoreline they camped. We do know that it was we have that description of that bluff, so we do know that it was probably in this area where there is in fact a bluff as he described. But access to Drayton Island, public access, is only through the ferry crossing from Georgetown across to Drayton Island. There are publicly accessed roads on Drayton Island, and so if people want to visit the island, they can stay on the roads and they can actually get on the island. But because most of it is in private ownership, you really can't hike around, and you certainly can't get to these actual Bartram sites by land.
If you read Bartram, he talks about, you know, when he camps and so forth, he would look for these big oak trees because there's no growth under the oak trees. It would be an open area. And in parts of it, he actually describes where you take his bedroll and he just roll it right up next to the trunk of the tree, and that becomes his pillow. And so as they're going up and down the river and looking for places to stay, this is what they'd look for. They'd look for the large oak tree, they'd look for the bluffs, the higher ground, so they'd be dry and they'd have safe place to stay underneath those trees. So this is, you know, this is as good a site as we could figure for the western side of Drayton Island.